In today's episode of the Best of Raleigh, we're exploring the city's future and growth with none other than Patrick Young, the director of Raleigh's Planning and Development Department. For over 2 decades, Patrick has dedicated his career to shaping cities, and since taking on this role in Raleigh, he's been a driving force behind some of the city's most transformative projects. From zoning to sustainable growth to urban density and making Raleigh a more vibrant and livable place, Patrick is the mastermind balancing our city's development with preserving the unique charm and the culture that draws so many here. So I'm excited to dive into today's episode and really get an understanding of all that's fabulous in Raleigh. Patrick, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Gretchen. Really appreciate it.
Welcome to the Best of Raleigh with your host and real estate expert, Gretchen Coley, owner of the Coley Group. This show is all about the people and places that make the Raleigh area so special. Here's your host, Gretchen Coley.
We're really excited to talk to you. As I said earlier, this is probably one of my most anticipated shows because I think there's so many conversations that you are having, that I'm having, that aren't being had with the public. And it's just so interesting to understand development, where Raleigh's going, the planning that goes into it, and how extensive that is. So what led you into planning?
Yeah, so again, Gretchen, thank you so much for having me. I had planned for most of my young life to go to law school.
Oh, okay.
I have 2 attorney uncles who kind of encouraged that, and I did an internship at a district attorney's office in college, and I hated it. Law is great field, and there's lots of different things you can do with it, but I really have passion about working on problems before they become problems.
I love that.
Right. Law often is about winners and losers, confrontational. I'm a big believer, and my passion is trying to work with people to find win-win solutions before things become litigious or contentious, where we generally, my experience has been we all want the same thing. And it took me about a year after I graduated from college to find the field. I had a friend from high school who did it, and as soon as I heard about what he did, the light bulb went on, and I haven't looked back.
You are so passionate about it. We had a lunch with one of our developer friends, and I could tell the moment that I sat down that you were so into what you're doing. It must be really incredible to be a part of a city that's experiencing the kind of growth that Raleigh is.
It really is. It's working here in Raleigh is a dream job for me. Raleigh is the second fastest growing region in the country for the last 10 years, right behind Austin, Texas. And that creates so many unique opportunities and challenges that both professionally and personally, I'm just grateful to be part of helping address and manage.
So what does the planning department specifically do?
Sure. So really 3 things. The first is work with the community and our elected officials on creating a long-term vision for growth. And as you alluded to in your introductory comments, it's such an important issue. The city does a survey of our residents every 2 years that makes sure that we get folks from all parts of the community. And the number one issue every year is growth. How are we managing growth? How can we do it different? How can we do it better? How can we make sure that we maintain the quality of life for our existing residents while welcoming new residents? And so that's a big part of our job, is working with the community to form those vision plans, whether that's a community-wide vision like our comprehensive plan, which looks at the whole range of growth issues over the next 20 or 30 years. We're just getting that underway. We can talk about that later. And then we also have what we call small area plans, where we look at really focused areas like the Village District was a previous one, and areas that have their own unique character and needs. And we do small area planning there, including our northeast and southeast areas between Knightdale in the northeast and on the southeast between Wendell and Garner, where we are really trying to have new growth that meets our needs and that is cost effective for the city to serve. The second thing we do is help develop rules and that implement that vision for growth. And that's what's called our Unified Development Ordinance.
UDO.
UDO. It's a bad word to many. It's almost 600-page rule book of everything you want to build, anything that comes out of the ground in Raleigh. You have to follow those rules. And essentially developing that, bringing that to council, and bringing that to the public to get feedback. Council adopts those rules, and then the third thing we do is implement those rules, right? And that includes the state building code, which is really about just the safety of buildings, including the zoning code, which is about what can be built where, how many stories can it be, how many trees have to be preserved, all the details of site development.
You know, it's so interesting to hear all of that, because that is a lot. There is a lot that's under your umbrella. And I would imagine, as you said, the proactive piece of that and getting the community to understand that we cannot stop growth, right? You cannot stop growth. The city cannot stop growth. If people want to come here, landowners have property rights. They're going to be able to come in one way or another. So, you know, how do you engage the community? You said that you give a survey, but if someone in the community wants to give you feedback, how does that work?
Sure. So first of all, we have a kind of open door policy. We have folks contact us on lots of different issues that pertain to their neighborhood or community concerns they have. And we're always happy to talk to any person or any group. So we meet with our citizens advisory councils. We meet with groups that have interest in specific issues such as stormwater or the environment. And we're always happy to do that. So we accept every offer that's made, and we would encourage any of your listeners to reach out to me or to our department, and we'll come and talk to you or your organization about these issues, because that community engagement is the most important thing we do. We've got to do this with the community's interests and the community's priorities and values in mind.
Let's talk about, because I do think that's an important piece. I think when it comes to growth, there are people like me who are like, grow, 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 but let's do it smart. And there are people who say, no more people in our town. They move here and they get hunkered down and they're like, oh, it's way busier now than it was before. But I think the long-term plan plays into that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I want to talk about the missing middle, because Raleigh has always been a super affordable city to live. It's part of the attraction here. Low taxes, low cost of housing, you know, insurance that is attainable. But you know, we've experienced massive growth since COVID. And a lot of the growth fights that are happening right now that we're hearing about in the papers are around the missing middle. Sure. What is the missing middle?
Sure. So the missing middle is a big piece of the strategy that the city is trying to implement to keep housing affordable over the long term. So what missing middle is any housing type that's between a single family house and a 4 or 5 story or taller apartment building. So prior to 2013, the vast majority of the city, well over 75%, only allowed single family housing. So I want to emphasize that single family housing is a great option for many families. And it will continue to be, and it should continue to be. But doesn't meet everybody's choices or preferences, and it doesn't meet everybody's budget, because single-family housing is becoming very expensive because land is so expensive.
Exactly.
As well as other reasons. And then in 2013, there were a series of reforms that were really needed, led by our newly elected District A Council member, Mitchell Silver, who was in my role as planning director back at that time, really identified this need to grow more densely in activity centers, areas like where we are now, Midtown, North Hills, Briar Creek, Triangle Town Center, areas that have the services and infrastructure to support growth. And that was a great plan, and it should continue to be a great plan. So what we saw was a lot of new apartment buildings in those areas.
Do condos fit into that as well?
They can. They really they can't. Condos can fit into that, but the changes that were made didn't necessarily allow smaller scale condos in all areas. So what we recognized in the last few years as council came to us asking for ways to continue to grow sustainably and affordably was to look at additional options. So what's missing is that middle piece between single family and so that means duplexes, triplexes, quads, small garden apartments, and things like small condo buildings.
Well, I think that's a really important piece. And, you know, we have seen an evolution in sweeping zoning changes, specifically in downtown Raleigh and inside the Beltline. And so it's kind of crazy to me how so many people are like, listen, we know we need this, but not in my backyard, right? So being able to have an accessory dwelling unit on the same property as a single family home. Being able to do duplexes on what was previously a single family lot, I think is a really important thing. And especially in downtown Raleigh, downtown Raleigh took a hit during COVID. It's starting to come back. And you look at cities that are larger in scale, like a Dallas and Houston's, and sometimes they neglect those downtowns that are so vital to how people live and function, especially around affordable housing. And I feel like the missing middle really addresses that. And I want to point out, the NNO ran an article this year titled "Raleigh's Missing Middle Has Produced Results." And you were quoted by saying that this makes Raleigh's program one of the most productive programs in the country. So kudos to you guys for doing such a great job with addressing that, because we have to have workforce housing. We have to have housing for those who aren't ready to purchase homes yet, even though I believe owning a home is how you build wealth in this country. I think there's so many advantages to it. So in the missing middle, let's talk about affordable housing. You are really passionate about making sure that there are affordable housing options for residents. So what are the options in the pipeline?
Yeah, sure. So there's really two pieces to that, right? One you've alluded to a couple of times, which is making sure that the supply of housing can keep up with demand and the types of housing that people are demanding. I've talked about single-family housing and how important it is, kind of the backbone of our housing, but we have a growing share of older folks over 65, empty nesters that maybe don't want to keep up that large house. We have a lot of young adults, like our children will be soon enough, that are going to be looking for a place to live as they move back to Raleigh, and it's really all about letting the market deliver those through these missing middle provisions and other provisions, those diversity of types to create a housing opportunity for everybody.
Well, we all know that in order to support a city, you have to have rooftops, right? It's one of the first things that people analyze. If you're going to open a restaurant or a business in downtown, you want to know, number one, where's your staff going to live and where are your customers going to come from? And they typically come from these little neighborhoods within the downtown. And we have so many of those in the pipeline. Last I heard, it was about $4.8 billion with a B in projects just coming to downtown specifically. That's got to be exciting for you and for the department, right?
Well, it's so exciting, and you're absolutely right that it's crucial. The office market, where people go to an office 9 to 5 every day, 5 days a week, is not coming back. It doesn't appear to be.
It's dwindling, yeah.
And there certainly are some folks that do that, but we have had about 50% daily occupancy rate. We have a higher lease up than that, but about 50% of those buildings are full. The only way we're going to keep downtown vital, sustainable, as you alluded to, is to have more people living close to downtown into any area where we want to have commercial activity. Folks constantly express their preference for being able to walk to a coffee shop or a grocery store or some other amenity. The only way that that's practical to do is to have enough people living close to those things to make it economically viable. We're usually talking in that kind of 6 to 10 units an acre, just to get the critical mass needed to keep those things sustainable. And the parts of our city that are most desirable, like the Village District and Oakwood and Boylan Heights and areas in town, they have that, right? Because those were developed prior to World War II, before we put these restrictive zoning limitations in place. I did want to quickly go back to part of your question that I neglected, which is on the affordable housing front, is the work that the city is doing using federal money and the bond money that our residents passed by almost 70% approval rate in 2020. It was a $80 million bond. We're working to find a whole host of ways to work with the private sector that uses the tax credit low-income housing tax credit program to provide gap financing for thousands of units. We produced about 2,600 units over the last 5 years. I have a goal for about that same number over the next 5 years. That is not going to completely in any way solve the affordable housing problem, but it shows a real commitment. We are a real leader among southern cities in making sure that those subsidized housing, because really making sure that there's legally binding affordable housing is part of the solution.
And I thank you for saying that, because I think it's important to point that out, because we have a project right now that we're working on, Loft 3, where there's 2 units that are in that building that are they have to be held for 30 years and rented out as affordable housing. But I think the word affordable housing gets used the wrong way. Yes, it is housing that is subsidized. However, affordable housing to me today is if almost 500, 400 and under in any kind of housing, because it's what's affordable to most people. Like, I want my son to be able to come out of college, be able to live in Raleigh. And I think being able to have housing that supports what monthly budgets can support is really important in a city if you want to continue to have the growth that we're having. And it's really not even about growth. It's about quality of life is what it comes down to, right? If you want that quality of life, we have to be able to support everyone. We can't just have this bougie city where everybody is, working from home and executives. We have to have people of all types. And that's what makes a city fun, vibrant, and beautiful. And in talking about that, in order to make the affordability piece work, in order to get the density in downtown, we have to have mass transit. And you guys are doing a lot of work on mass transit, correct?
Yeah, we sure are, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we're really starting to try to change the frame a little bit between from affordable housing, which of course is important.
Yes.
Housing is the average household's by far largest expense, and the federal government says you shouldn't spend over 30% of your income. If you're spending over that amount, you're considered cost burdened. But the second largest expense, and it's quite close, and it's the gap is closing, is transportation. Right, the average family spends about 20% of their income on transportation, well over $600 a month. And so if we can create environments where people can either have no car or less cars, right? So instead of having a car for every family member, maybe you have one car for your household, and you can do more trips through transit or through walking or through microtransit, like on a bike or on a scooter. That really makes a big difference over time. And it really, so what we're committed to as a city is creating a strong transit network that's going to be based off of two parts. The bus rapid transit lines, which are really almost like a subway with wheels.
Yeah, they are.
It's a lot more affordable, but it has that same service dynamic. New Bern Avenue, the New Bern Avenue BRT is going to be the first one, going all the way out to New Hope Church Road, past Wake Med, which is a huge center for employment and for people to work and congregate and go. There's also a Wake Tech campus there. It's a great destination all the way into downtown. And then we're going to have a southern line that's going to go down Wilmington and Salisbury Street down to Garner.
I love it.
A western line that is going to go on Western Boulevard to Cary. And then a northern line that's in the final stages of planning that'll have some service to the North Hills area over to Triangle Town Center. And so and then we also have quickly a frequent transit network that are not just on those four lines, but that we either currently or plan to have faster than 15-minute service. So what the research has found is that if you have a bus in front of your house or within a quarter mile, let's say a 5-minute walk, every 15 minutes or sooner, that becomes nearly competitive to a car, right?
Right.
And one of the reasons people don't take transit in our region is some of our services are half hour. You really have to plan your day around that.
It takes a little more planning than we're used to, because we haven't had to do that before.
Sure. So we really got to get the transit service up to a level where it's competitive with a vehicle, and we really feel like there's a strong plan over the next 5 to 6 years to do that. That New Bern line should be underway coming in 25 and completed by 27.
That's awesome. We've got a friend who has a house right on that line, so we're trying to figure out what we can do with that.
Tremendous.
Talking about planning, let's talk about the what's up for Raleigh, the 20-year plan. Like, you guys are in the middle of creating a new plan right now, because our current plan is over 2030, correct?
That's right.
Or phasing out.
So I mentioned our prior plan, which was developed in 2007 and 8, adopted in 2009.
Boy, those were rough years to create a plan.
Well, they were an inflection point, and listen, the city and the planning department at that time did a great job. It really has helped lead us to the growth we've seen over the last 15 years, which I think has been high quality, sustainable, and planned thoughtfully. But we have new challenges, right? And we've talked about a lot of them today already. And so that exactly as you said, that 2009 plan was intended to go through 2030. By 2026, 2027, we want to have a new plan in place for the next 20 years through 2050. And that involves trying to anticipate a lot of the trends that are emerging. We do have, as you've alluded to, the younger generation particularly, and a lot of empty nesters have a different demand for housing. They want to be able to walk somewhere. They want to be able to take transit. And then, all of those trends that we talked about, increasing transit usage, increasing diversity of housing types, those also get towards other key societal issues like greenhouse gas emissions, right? A townhouse uses on average, about half as much energy as a single family house because of the shared walls, roofs, and infrastructure. So really trying to pull all those pieces together is important. But most importantly, and I can't emphasize this strongly enough, is we want to make sure that we have the community's input, thoughts, concerns. What are they seeing about growth that they like? What are they seeing that they want to change or course correct on? The way we're going at that is to have a series of what we're calling community conversations. The first of those was a couple months ago at the Raleigh Convention Center around affordable housing. We call it our Affordable Housing Summit. That was an all-day event, and that's online. I can share the link with you.
We'll link it down below.
Great, that's great. And then the second one is in the first week of December. I'll send you the schedule for these.
That'd be great.
On stormwater and kind of managing stormwater runoff, which is one of the areas we hear a lot of concern about. People concerned about additional development causing additional stormwater or flooding. A third issue we're going to be looking at in the coming months is mobility, so transportation and transit, trees. We're going to look at community character, kind of what does that mean and how do we address it. So we're really excited about this series of listening sessions. It's really all about presenting some information on those. We're going to get a national speaker. We're going to have a kind of state of the city, and then we're going to have, most importantly, a community conversation where we hear about people's. And then based on all that feedback, we're going to start the process of policy development, working closely with council over next year and through 2026.
That's, I know that whatever comes out of that is going to be spectacular because I do think Raleigh is such a cultural melting pot right now. We have so many people coming from all over the world because of our economy, our job market, our education systems. We have everything that people are looking for. And like you said, we've got young professionals and empty nesters, and one is following the other. Usually it's the child who moves here with the grandchild, and then the parents are right behind him, and the sisters and the brothers, because Raleigh is such a great place to live. And so thinking of Raleigh's future, for you personally, what excites you the most about what's happening?
Yeah, I think it's the opportunity to get welcome new neighbors and all of the opportunities, the economic opportunities that brings, the opportunities to learn and grow, to take advantage of the benefit of folks from all over, as you said, all over the country and all over the world, and doing it in a way that doesn't jeopardize or diminish the great quality of life we have here in Raleigh. It's a really tough needle to thread.
It is.
But we are really committed to doing it because I think Raleigh will evolve, but we want to keep what makes us attractive and great. And we feel like we can do that with the community input and thoughtful policies.
And I think you are the perfect person to help guide this. You are the perfect middleman between council, between the community, and you're passionate about our city. You've raised your children here, so I feel like it's really exciting to think about. Raleigh has changed so much in the last 20 years. What do the next 20 hold for us? Yeah. And we've got a lot of really incredible people just like yourself that are helping to steer that ship. So if you out there have questions, we're going to put a bunch of links down here in the description for you to be able to get to Patrick, to get to the community input page, to find out about the calendars that we've talked about, to really help get involved in the conversation, whether you're if you're a current Raleigh resident or thinking about moving here. Being involved is how you put your fingerprint on this incredible city. So Patrick, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you out there for listening. I hope you got so much out of today's conversation and felt like a fly on the wall, able to kind of hear the inner workings of it. Obviously Patrick and I think that Raleigh is an incredible place to live. And if you're here and love it, we love that you're here. And if you're thinking about making a move to Raleigh, we want to be your go-to real estate partners. We know this city inside and out. You can reach us at all the contact information below, and we drop a new episode of the Best of Raleigh, which is intended to introduce you to the people, the places, and the businesses that you need to know in Raleigh. We drop an episode on Fridays on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube, and we will see you in the next Best of Raleigh.